Welcome, one and all, to Matchbook Six Nations special, Matchday 3 of the Six Nations, and 3 cracking games on the schedule, single-digit handicaps and all. I am joined to preview 3 of these weekend's games by Mark O'Hare at the bottom of the screen, and returning after a long absence, Swano, all the way from sunny Melbourne. How are you, mate?
Not too bad, Sully. Hasn't been very sunny for the last week, unfortunately.
I think we might have lost your picture there, but we can hear your audio, Swano, so we'll keep going there. Mark, we had obviously the week off from the Six Nations, but prior to that, we were pretty much on the money with Scotland and England. You were on plus 7.5. You had a fair bit of a sweat there in the last couple of minutes, but the total, the under 39.5, never in doubt, man.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say about that game at Murrayfield? It was almost a swimming pool, really. Very difficult conditions for both teams. England obviously edged it. Probably a bit more wise to the conditions and situation, really, and their game management exceeded the Scots, really. But there's very little you can really learn from those kind of games. But yeah, I kind of got the rub of the green. You nailed it, really. Yeah,
look, it was just one of those ones. Six Nations, though, Mark, it's so tough to call, isn't it? I mean, look, we're going into Matchday 3, as you said, and like, have we any real clear vision and, you know, proper readings of all of these teams? It's just so difficult right now.
It is, and I hope the viewers or the listeners won't mind us saying this, but it is very difficult. Obviously, coming straight off the back of a Rugby World Cup, most of these teams, or all of the teams, are essentially in transition now in a new 4-year cycle. What have we learned from the first couple of rounds? Well, you can't learn a huge amount in 2 games of rugby. That's far too small a sample size to be making any grand claims about any of these teams. And obviously, as you say, there's the single-digit handicaps for all 3 matches this weekend, which suggests they're all going to be pretty tight. It's hard to see a massive blowout in any of the 3, which from a watcher's perspective, it's good news, really. We don't want to see these massive blowouts. We want to see keenly contested games and hopefully a bit of progress from all 6 nations, and I think we have seen slithers of that in all 6 teams. A few weaknesses as well, but yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how these 3 games play out. And I don't think there's any harm in saying it's very difficult to try and second guess what's going to happen.
Absolutely. I kicked Swano out of the camera here, live recording for a second. He's going to come back in a second, but let's go to Sunday's game, Mark. We're going to start with England and Ireland. Eddie Jones named his team at 11 o'clock. We've had a couple of minutes to digest it. But I mean, look, Jonathan Joseph at 11 is probably the main talking point. Swano, you're back with us, mate?
Back, yeah. I don't know what
good, man. Swano, yeah, good, man. Look, I'll kick it off with you here. We're just talking about Eddie Jones, the English selection. Jonathan Joseph at 11 is probably, the biggest shock here. For the life of me, I can't remember him starting on the wing. We expected Tom Curry to be still at 8. Manu Tuilagi is at 13. What are you making of this one? And Laws at 6, Swano. You look at that team and Eddie Jones, it's almost like he's trolling us at this stage.
Yeah, well, he still doesn't want to pick any specialist aid for sure anyway. I think with Laws, probably target the line out again, which has worked for him in the past against Ireland. He switched it up in some of the Rugby World Cup games as well, where he brought in the extra line out jumper and, he switched up Ford and Farrell depending on the opposition. I mean, Joseph in the wing, where Furbank's injured, so they've moved Elliot Daly back, which isn't a huge surprise there. So, yeah, I mean, I guess he's sticking with guys who are in the squad and have been around the squad.
Mark, what are you thinking about this one early doors as well? Because, I mean, we had it last night, the Furbank was going to be out anyway, so we were expecting Daly to shift to 15. But I would have thought, if you look at Andrew Conway in the game against Wales, that box kick and Sexton's kicks crossfield kicks to him. He's such a weapon for a small enough guy. He can get up so far. I would have thought, looking at Ollie Thorley's form with Gloucester this season, that he would have been a bit of a shoe-in there. But what do I know, Mark? But you're putting a centre out to play against one of the best Northern Hemisphere guys under a high ball right now.
Yeah, I believe it's Joseph's 50th cap this weekend as well, and it's the first time I'd have started on the wing as well. So what a time to do it, really. But,
yeah,
I'll be honest, I dread Ireland going to Twickenham. I have done since I was a little kid. I guess it's the scars from growing up in the 90s and getting absolutely hammered there every other year. I've never really got over that, to be honest. And I know Ireland have had a fair bit of success in the Six Nations era at Twickenham. It's still quite a daunting venue, despite the team selection that Eddie Jones has put out, which we were all kind of scratching our heads and going, well, there's potentially a chance here for Ireland, and probably more than just a chance. But I think we've spoken off air previously about the Twickenham factor, and we kind of talk about home advantage and how many points is it worth. I actually think the Twickenham factor is worth a little bit more compared to normal home advantage. I do think it's quite an intimidating prospect for visiting teams, and their Six Nations record really exemplifies that as well. I'm ignoring the game last year and in the sort of the World Cup warm up. I don't think it had any real bearing on either where the two teams were at that time, but. I also can't get out of my mind what happened 12 months ago when England came to Dublin and basically beat up the Irish pack and exposed Robbie Henshaw at 15. And I guess that was the beginning of the end of the Joe Schmidt era. The highs of November 2018 were quickly forgotten about, and Ireland couldn't live without muscle and physicality. And you look at that team now, and yes, it's still what they're going to try and do to Ireland, but they're not quite as formidable as they once were, particularly in the World Cup without the Vunipolas. Curry at 8, he's 4 stone lighter than Billy. Marler moving into the front row, and in place of Maku, there's 2 big ball carriers there, 2 big defensive players who are missing. And obviously the Manu Tuolangi come back in is massive. And if he wasn't involved, then maybe I would be looking to get Ireland on side potentially to win the game. But he's had great joy against the Irish midfield, so it's a big test now for Henshaw and Aki to step up. We kind of criticised them a little bit going into round 2, but I thought they stepped up really, really well against Wales, really fronted up and performed really well. I just would say that, while there's been a couple of green shoots in Ireland making baby steps in the right direction under Farrell, we're pretty pleased with how they played against Wales, but Wales were nowhere near their best in that game. So you've got to kind of weigh it all up, really. England have only lost 4 games and 33 at Twickenham, 17 wins from 19 in the Six Nations at home as well. Obviously, Ireland are one team to kind of go there and put the cat amongst the pigeons, and Scotland got a draw there as well. But I still find it hard to really kind of back Ireland a huge amount of confidence this weekend. I was looking towards England at 1-12, my favourite market, obviously, but that team selection has kind of put me back a little bit. So I'm starting to look towards Ireland with the handicap start of 7.5. We talk about that magic 7-point number, and I expect it to be tight.
So to talk to me about this market, first of all, I mean, look, we were expecting it maybe to go with England, but obviously in the last hour, the line seems to be going with Ireland. I mean, 7.5 now a match book, but I'll be honest, that's about 1.72. Most of the sports books are showing kind of a flat 7 with the draw. 6.5 is the main 2-point mark. But Swano, I look at this line and it seems a bit trappy, and I don't know if you want to be. There's obviously the very key number to 7. I don't know if you want to be getting down to plus 5.5 here with Ireland. And if you are going to back them, it might be just a case of backing them on the match odds here. What are you thinking with this one?
I'd be thinking more along Mark's lines. Like, there's still a little bit of 7.5 knocking about at the moment. It might not last past the end of the day or after the team is named for the next couple of hours. The difference in England, England's performance in the semi-final of the World Cup was unbelievable. Like, there were, it's one of the best performances I've seen in the last 10 years from any team. And these performances tend to happen with England when, in the last couple of years, when they have the Vunipolas and Tuilagi on the pitch. Like, it's much easier for Tuilagi to be getting over the gain line when they've got really good front football. And I just don't see them getting as much from football. I can really see the 2 packs cancelling each other out. Like, the scrum could be relatively even. We've got Jacko Paper refereeing. He's quite fastidious around set piece and stuff. I can see a lot of resets and messing around there. The back rows as well. Like, obviously Curry and Underhill are excellent, but, Van der Fleer and Stander and O'Mahony are pretty decent themselves at that. So I can really see the packs cancel each other out. Both have good sets of halves. They'll try and, dictate the game. But, outside of Tuilagi, I don't see a huge difference across the teams here, where in previous games when you've had, Billy Vunipola at 8 and, even Mako on the loose, I think is, that's where he adds most really in the loose. Like, I don't think they lose much from Marler or Mako in the scrummaging. But in the loose, Mako's excellent. And, the more offloading you're getting from the likes of him, it's only, at Six Nations level, 1 or 2 little breaks and offloads, and that's really what can decide these games.
But even Swano, that English pack as a whole, where do you see the ball carriers there? I don't see them.
No, I don't see many ball carriers, but I don't see many ball carriers in the Irish pack either. CJ Stander will carry the ball 20 times, but he'll only make 25 meters out of those 20 times. He is very good at presenting the ball back, but it's not huge go forward ball. I can see both packs having the ball quite a lot, keeping the ball, not gaining huge amount of meters, and maybe a bit of magic one way or the other could decide the game. So in that, I think it'll be a low scoring game. We haven't had a total yet. I'd be surprised if the total goes up less than 40. I make it less than 40. People have, I think, without having significant weather, there seems to be a bit of a mental block going below the 40 mark in these games. But yeah, so looking at the plus 7.5 and looking at an under if it's up around the 41, 42 kind of mark.
Yeah, I have to agree with that one, Mark. What are you thinking? I don't want to be back in the overs here. Even with two exceptionally solid goal kickers in Sexton and Farrell. Although you could argue at the moment that Farrell is not having his kicking boots on. Obviously, he had that tough game weather-wise at Murrayfield. But it seems an obvious one. If you got 42, I don't think you'll get to 43, but even as 41.5 to stay in under that one.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, Sully. I'm not a huge under-over backer in rugby. I kind of let you guys, the experts, kind of take care of that market. But yeah, there's no way I can see this being a high-scoring game. Bit of a scrap. Discipline's going to be huge for both teams. Obviously, the breakdown's going to be interesting too. But just from a psychological aspect as well, I just thought I'd throw in that this is England's homecoming really from the World Cup. It's their first home game of the tournament since the World Cup. From what you can hear from the English press over here, the players are feeling pretty frustrated and disappointed and upset with the press coverage they've had so far in this competition on the back of the World Cup performance. I think they probably expected to be given a little bit more leniency in how they went about their business, and obviously starting the way they did against France wasn't a great way to kind of go about their business. But they feel like they've got something to prove in this match, which is always a bit concerning when you go to Twickenham against an England team who are kind of backed up against the wall, written off. It is my only concern here that they could really turn it on. But again, you go back to that team selection. It's very Eddie Jones, isn't it? It's very safe in areas. It's very puzzling in certain other areas as well. And you look at the bench split as well of 6 forwards and 2 backs, one of which is a player who's been out with a cracked ankle for 2 months as well. So, I mean, from an Irish perspective, you'd be going there licking your lips thinking we have got an opportunity here. But as well, you want to look at things from the England perspective too and think, they're going to be ready for Ireland. They know what Ireland are all about. There's not a huge amount of change in that team. I do still favour England narrowly.
And speaking of that bench, obviously that 6-2 split, as you alluded to, that seems to be very much the South African way of doing things, with Matthew Profile coming in as forwards coach there as well. Willie Hines is still in the squad. Can anyone make the case to me that Willie Hines is an international rugby player? Can anyone? No one? No?
I mean,
silence?
He's a very solid guy.
Yeah.
He's a smart operator.
I'm not disputing that for a second. No, I know, but he's not international class. Okay, we may just double back to that one, guys, later in the recording. Again, we are waiting on total as we record early on Friday afternoon, so we might have a look later in the show to see what we have totals coming in. So let's move on to Wales-France, guys. As you can see the betting on screen right now, plus 5.5's main handicap. Total is 42.5. The match odds, Wales 1.59, France 2.93, the draw 20.5. Mark O'Hare, I will start with you first. Okay, so there's always question marks about France, but there seems to be the positive spin on them though. Like, they have been backed all week. I saw this line get down as far as about 4.5 earlier in the week. It's bounced back to 5.5. We have the injury obviously to Rates, and it's moved Fiku to 11. Vakatawa comes back in at 13. And of course, they've changed it further because they've moved Arthur Van Sant to 12. So you've got those changes. What are you making, mate? France away from home. Shall we be on them this week?
Not for me. I think there's still a lot to prove really from this French team. Go back to the very start of the conversation. We've seen 2 games and 2 very different games and performances from France. I think from a Welsh perspective, you look at how they're approaching this game. It's the most experienced and cap-heavy 15 in Six Nations history. Yeah. They outnumber France by caps by 8-5-9 to 2-3-4. Wayne Pivac pretty confident in saying, experience is key here in this match. And from a French perspective, it's really the litmus test to where this French team are. Playing England at home in your first Six Nations game under a new coach and a capacity crowd in Paris, it's very easy to get up for that game. It's Italy at home, not so much, and going away is really where they've come unstuck in recent years. And then you look at the way things are building up to this match. It's quite exciting from my perspective in terms of the mini war of words which has kind of erupted between the two camps, and Wyn Jones suggesting that French are cheating at scrum time, and Galtier and Ibanez biting back, saying it's a lack of respect and pointing out that Wales have actually conceded the most penalties from the scrum across the whole competition so far, and France are amongst the fewest. So, these interesting little subplots are kind of building into this match, which, there's pressure on both teams to perform, more so for Wales, obviously, after that game in Dublin, where I didn't think they really showed up after 2 free hits against the Barbars and Italy. Tompkins, who we bigged up after round 1, was very poor, particularly in defence as well. So ultimately, I do see Wales edging a very tight match again. Games between these two teams are notoriously tight and difficult to second guess, but Wales have had the edge in recent years. I appreciate there's a completely different French team on show here, new coach, new management, new approach, etc. But it's hard to sort of get away from those last 9 head-to-heads. Wales are winning 8 of them. 6 by 7 points or fewer, the last 4 of which have been by 5 points or fewer, and 3 by a maximum of 2 points as well. So I think the line is probably just about right, with home advantage giving Wales the edge here. I can see plenty of scope to back France on the start earlier in the week, maybe not so much now, because terrific for 40 minutes against England. Then they came under real pressure, laboured, I thought, against Italy, and the game was still in the balance for that final quarter. Defensively, a little lax as well compared to what we saw in the first week, conceding 3 tries. And of course, I mentioned it, the away record in the Six Nations. In the last 10 years, they've won 10 of 47 away in the Six Nations, which just isn't good enough for a team with the individual quality that France have. And Wales are so strong in Cardiff, 15 wins from 17 at home in the Six Nations, only losing to England in that sequence, 3 defeats and 22 in this competition in Cardiff, going back a bit further as well. So, I do expect Wales's experience to tell here, and I expect them to narrowly win this game. So for me, it's 1-12, Wales 2.5.
So when we look at that second half against Italy, and I mean, France were pretty brutal. I mean, the final stats, Italy had 55% of possession. I mean, they were, whatever they were, 26-point underdogs there. They shouldn't have 55% of possession. But you look at this whole Sean Edwards thing all week, and there's this massive narrative about it. But to me, it seems a bit overplayed. I mean, he's not coming back to take on Gatland. Pivac's in. They're probably running a whole lot of different plays. Where are you on this one? Where do you see the value, Swano? Because there seems to be a bit of momentum behind France right now, whereas Wales seem to be going this way.
Yeah, I mean, Pivac's obviously trying to change the way Wales are playing from what I've seen so far. Very, very hard to get a handle on either team.
Yeah,
I think at this stage, Wales conceded 2 tries against Ireland that they just wouldn't have conceded, in the Gatland-Edwards era. There's been many, many games where Ireland have been battering the line, 20 phases, and, they might eventually sneak one over, and there were a couple. The one Tompkins fell off the tackle, the Larmer one, and then even the Furlong one. They were just tries that Wales don't normally concede. Then, by the same token, I was pretty big on England head to head against France. I thought there was too much hype around France. Saying that they were going to win that game 33% of the time, which I still don't think they'd win it 33% of the time. Manu Tuilagi going off injured early, 15 minutes in, didn't help England, but England were very slow out of the blocks, bit of a World Cup hangover or whatever.
And Swano, 20 minutes to go, that French team were rocking. They were under massive pressure.
They were out in their feet, and there were a couple of knock-ons that were missed and stuff in the game as well. That in the second half, that really could have set England up, in the 22. So it's really hard for me this game. What Mark's saying, the 1-12. That seems a relatively solid play in this. If I had to pick, if I was forced into having a bet, I'd probably go with France just to win the game as opposed to on a plus or something. They definitely have the potential, France, if they turn up. And if Wales haven't sorted out these defensive issues, France could nick it. But again, it's about 2.9ish. You wouldn't be steaming into it, I don't think.
Talk to me about the first half, Mark, because we chatted about this off air, Swano. France, and you've seen in the first 2 games, that they have this Sean Edwards defensive system. They're coming up hard. It's taking a lot out of them physically by the time we get to the second half. Is there an angle here that we can maybe attack France in the first half and maybe just kind of leave the rest of the game to a side?
Yeah. I don't mind that at all. France, even going back to the World Cup, I was reading from the Mid-All article that They've scored the first try in every game bar the RG game since the start of the World Cup, and that game they had a decent lead as well at halftime anyway, despite not scoring the first try. So they have been starting fast, which is, something that we don't normally associate with France. Nope. Previously. So yeah, I don't mind that. Whether you're backing France to win the first half, or, probably you're not going to get bigger than a 3. In the first half handicap. So I think you'd be looking at France to win the first half, or even as you're saying off air, potentially a halftime, full-time France-Wales.
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking at. 6.6 currently a matchbook. France to win the first half and Wales to win the second half. Mark, just another thing on this game, and I touched on it at the start here. To me, your defensive leader, he's been called the defensive captain, Gael Ficou, moving him from 12 to 11. That's going to have an impact. How can a defensive leader be a winger? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Well, we've talked about Eddie Jones doing Eddie Jones things.
Yeah.
And France are doing very French things, aren't they? So we think they've made changes for the positive effect in their coaching team, but then they go and make a decision like this, which, I can't understand. You don't understand. I guess we're not on the inside, so they must know more than we do. But it's not something I'm massively in favour of.
Yeah.
Obviously, having Vakatawa back in the midfield is massive, really, especially if Tompkins has the same game against France as he did against Ireland in Dublin. But just I want to throw something else into the mix. Actually, an interesting trend I saw earlier that all flankers and number 8s have won all the Man of the Match awards so far in the Six Nations. Now, I appreciate it's still a very small sample, but Justin Tipperick's knocking around about 14-1 for this game. Feels like a game for Tipperick to really stand up and dominate around the loose. So that kind of stood out to me.
And he's going to have to, because Olivon has been fantastic. Aldry has been immense as well, and Francois Cross. Swano, total-wise, 42.5. Have we an indication yet, guys? I think this might be announced early afternoon as well, that the roof may be closed. I don't think there's a massive amount of weather in Cardiff, but, I mean, Swano, a Wales side that is struggling offensively. Yes, they're struggling defensively as well, but that seems a kind of high enough number as well. This kind of strikes me as maybe a kind of a 20, kind of 14 kind of game.
Yeah, I'd be on the underside of 42.5 for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Roof open or closed.
Roof open or closed for Swano, taking the under. Love it, man. Okay, let's move on, guys. Ordinarily, Mark, you've known that the past 2 weeks that I'm despairing of Italy and even talking about Italy, but all of a sudden they're single point underdogs. Currently at Matchbook, 49.5 is the total. Talk to me, Mark. Could we be backing Italy here plus 7.5? Surely not.
I can't. No, not at all. I've seen glimpses, encouraging glimpses, but I've seen glimpses in the last few years under Conor O'Shea too. Unfortunately, I just think their defence isn't going to hold firm enough. They've lost 24 games in this competition on the spin. 22 of those have been by at least 10 points, and yet the handicap here is around 8. So I think Scotland will be encouraged but very frustrated with their first 2 performances. Easily could have got something out of the Irish game if Stuart Hogg hadn't dropped that ball against England as well. Stuart Hogg made a glaring error as well, which kind of handed England the initiative as well in that second half. So, but he's also showing glimpses of what he's possible and capable of in possession. But what's really impressed me, really, from a Scotland perspective, you mentioned it from the outset, Sully, when we started these conversations this year, the influence that Steve Tandy's had since coming in as defensive coach. Scotland no longer look like the sort of soft touch that they once were, especially away from home in that game in Dublin. And I guess the big blow for them really is having Richie Gray missing for this. He's so key for them in defensive and kind of making his tackles and getting around the park. Scotland, actually, an interesting stat I thought was they've had the least amount of time in possession so far, yet I think they've made the most tackles, or the fewest tackles, I should say, which kind of goes to show that their defensive systems are working. The weather obviously affected things against England, which you can't read too much into it. It's just the attack which hasn't really clicked, and obviously you can look towards Finn Russell's absence towards that. But I actually think Adam Hastings has played pretty well for the most part, and Chris Harris comes into the centres. He's had a good season with Gloucester as well, so they're obviously going to get chances against this Italy team who, again, some stats. I mentioned them before round 2, which just puzzling stats, really. Italy have had the most possession so far in the Six Nations, made the most carries, made the most meters. They've been chucking the ball around quite a lot as well. I've actually sort of grown to quite like the combination of Allen and Canner at 10-12. And Minozzi's obviously a cut above the rest.
He is, yep.
But it's defensively, really. They're rock bottom for tackle success rate, rock bottom for missed tackles. It's not really the ideal when you're limiting possession to opponents, but still giving away countless chances, really. So, it's a tough one to call in a sense that these games are always pretty tight between these two. It's massive pressure on the Scots to get this win. They have done the business in Rome the last 3 times they've been here. Most matches between them are pretty tightly contested. So the handicap did appeal, but I'm going back to my old favourite, Scotland by 1-12, 2.9, which I thought was a nice price actually.
Yeah, the line seems to be going with Italy. I mean, it was 9 earlier in the week. We're looking at 7.5 right now. Swano, I touched on it earlier, that second half performance, especially for Italy against France. They obviously got the good try in the first half as well. Is there a danger you could read too much into that?
Definitely. Like of all the teams, France with a lead and just playing against Italy, their mind's already gone to the next game.
Yeah.
Italy just haven't really done anything over an 80-minute period in like how long at this stage? 3 Six Nations, 4 Six Nations.
They're only on a 24-match losing streak, so they are juice one, like.
Yeah, I mean, like, as I was saying, like I don't feel like I've got a really good handle on any team so far after 2 rounds, it's been a very unusual start to the Six Nations. Like, there's been weather and there's been whatever else, but the form was kind of been thrown out the window in most of the games, and things haven't really gone the way you'd normally expect them to go. And there hasn't really been any consistency from any team. You can say Scotland have defended well in both of the games. Conditions in the second game where you're always going to give that a low total. If Scotland got it right, that they could win the game by 20. But on the other hand, if Italy get off to a lead and get ahead of Scotland, then Scotland could struggle to get back into it. So, it wouldn't be. You could nearly go either way, like back Scotland on a bigger alternate, and lay them at $1.36 or $1.37, and with a view to trading out of it if they're if they start off well. It's just that kind of game.
That may be the way to go, right? There's no twist, but you probably will expect Italy to come out fiery in some. But I mean, look, this has got to be Scotland's cup final too. I mean, they don't want to be getting a wood. This is the wooden spoon game for all intents and purposes. Okay, guys, let's maybe double back to the Ireland game. We haven't seen a total here, Swano, but if we were going to play the under here, what kind of number would you be looking for to play the under? I'm thinking we may get into that 40s mark. I can't see maybe 30 at 39.
Yeah, well, if it's 41, I'm definitely taking unders. 40, I'm probably taking unders as well. It's just got like a 21-17 kind of England victory. A tight game where neither team gets a big lead and it stays tight, cancel each other at the breakdown. As I was saying earlier, Jacko Paper and the resets and that. Something Mark mentioned actually just with the man of the matches and the flankers. It's good to look at the who the home broadcaster is, and so the co-commentator is going to be giving the man of the matches. So where you might have thought Andrew Conway, I would have thought he would have got the man of the match maybe last week in the Ireland game. But when you've got Alan Quinlan, a back row forward from Munster, as the co-commentator in these games. It's no surprise that CJ Stander's 2 out of 2. But these are the little things that people will have their favourites as well in those kind of markets.
I love that angle, Mark, that we're looking at co-commentators now to see what position they play. They're just look, bias is bias, and there's no getting away from that. Okay, guys, let's do a weekend best bet from each of us. I'm going to kick this one off. I'm not going to go into massive amount of detail for this, but. Second half, highest scoring half. I think you can back it about 1.8, 1.83 in the Italy and Scotland game. So I want to touch on a lot of the points there. I think Italy probably will come out all fired up. Same as Scotland, defensively, Scotland are quite good, but potentially it could be one of those games that opens up in the second half, and it's a short price, but it's kind of an exceptionally trappy weekend. So I would suggest to be doing stuff at big prices here and not be getting too carried away with big investments at shorter prices. Swano, give me a best bet for the weekend, mate.
If I can say the under in that game of 41, if it is 41,
I think you can, yeah.
If it's not, you might get a 3.5 Ireland first half handicap as well, or the 7.5. So either way, they're all kind of pointing in the same direction in that game, like a low scoring game and a close game.
Mark O'Hare, what are you thinking this weekend, man?
I'll take the Wales game then. So we've got them all covered. Wales to win by 1-12. I think obviously that there's a massive danger there that France could turn up with this young, vibrant, exciting team and put on a show and kind of silence the doubters such as I, who kind of always been keen to oppose them when they've been away from home. I appreciate it's a brand new dawn for this French team, and they've shown a lot of potential in the first 2 weeks. But Wales and Cardiff, I always want them on side, especially in these kind of tight matches. If the roof is closed as well, I think that plays into Wales's hands, and they don't have enough to get over the line by a narrow margin.
Yeah, I won't lie. I did back Wales earlier in the week, -4.5 when the line went that way. But having chatted to Alan Bowden in one of our WhatsApp groups, he's after turning me off. He reckons George North is finished. Nick Tompkins is a weak link at 13. He's probably not wrong. I mean, look,
I agree on North for sure.
Yeah, Tompkins is going to probably have to have the game of his life against Fakatawa to keep him a bit quiet. And yeah, looking at the Welsh back row as well, Moriarty and ahead of Wainwright, I think it's a bit like for like. I agree with you, Swano. I think if Wales are to win, I think Tipperick is going to have an absolute stormer, especially against that French back row, because they've been awesome the first two games. So that might be a good angle. But I do also like that France-Wales double result, just over 11-2 at 6.6. So that might be worth a flyer. And maybe just oppose France in play if they get out to a start, because they are flagging and somebody's going to catch them one of these second halves. That would be my thought. So, anything for Super Rugby at the weekend, mate? Anything we need to be watching out for?
Yeah, I wanted to back the Rebels. They've got somehow, the game being in Melbourne, they've still managed to get a South African referee to come over and help the Sharks out. So that's just, I don't understand it. They use money as the excuse why the South African referees are...
Can't be as bad as the Argentinian referee reffing the Jaguares against the Reds last weekend.
Yeah, but this is the thing with the competition. They need to get rid of that. And if they're saying it's about money, why is there a South African guy coming over here to ref this game? If I'm having a bet, I'll have a look at it tomorrow. The Brumbies line moved about 5 points during the week, and there was rumours of mumps and stuff in the camp. But Folau Fine goes out. At the end, I know he scored a hat trick last week, but I mean it's interchangeable who scores those rolling ball tries. Yeah. Montoya got a hat trick last week. Creevy had a start. Creevy would have got a hat trick as well. I think the Brumbies getting 16 points against the Chiefs. I think that's a decent bet.
Yeah, Chiefs are all the rage right now in Super Rugby. Right, gentlemen, that's it. That's it for us. We'll be back again. We've Six Nations next week, don't we? No break next week, so we'll be back next week. Best of luck with your bets this weekend. 3 terrific games. I don't know if there's a massive amount of value to be had, but I think they could be very much a watching brief for a lot of us. Best of luck with your bets, and we'll talk to you next week.